Hi, and welcome to the 12 Days of Making It Forge. Today I'm going to be showing off how to make a hat on our brand new knitting machine. Your hat will look something like this, and you can go as big or as little as you like. This is a sort of medium size, and it's quite stretchy as well, material. So I have the machine ready, and let's get started with our project. So the first step starting any project on the AliExpress is to make sure it's on the right setting. So for a hat, we're going to be knitting in the round. We're going to make sure the switch is down. If we were to make something, for example, like a scarf or a baby blanket, we'd want it to be on plain knitting, which flip it up. But for our purposes now, we're going to just keep it down. Our next step is to reset the stitch counter right here. Just go ahead and rotate it until it's on 0. Usually when the machine's been used, it'll be on whatever stitch the last person who used it on was on before they finished their project. So, more so than the actual knitting process, with this machine, the tricky part is the prep and then the cast off after finishing your project. For plain knitting, you do need to know how to do a general sort of bind off with needles. However, for this project, there's no plain knitting involved. We're just going to use the machine. So our first step is we're going to locate these 3 black hooks. There's only 3 of them on the machine, and all the other ones around are white. So once you've located these, rotate it until the one on the farthest right here, is pointing up. We're going to take our yarn and we're going to give it a bit of a tail. Make sure that when it goes through the middle, it touches whatever surface is underneath. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go around the front of this hook on towards the left. So the next hook, we're going to go behind it, and the hook after, we're going to go in front. And what we're going to do is just go around and alternate between going in front of and behind the hooks. And really take your time with this process, because the quality of your cast on will really determine how well your knitting works as you go through the steps. Let's make sure everything's correct. Okay. We're almost at the end. So once we reach our black hooks one more, the last white hook right before it, we're going to go behind. We're going to open this little door, and we're going to put our yarn through, make sure it goes through this little notch right there, and close. Now we're ready to get knitting. Have your ball of yarn ready, and just loosen up a little bit at a time as we go through the process. So I'm going to loosen out a little bit, and then ready to start knitting. And so here we just start rotating the crank. We're going to rotate it clockwise. So if you're sitting in front of the machine, that would be away from you. So our yarn's caught a little bit here. So I'm going to loosen out a little bit more. And let's keep going. Alright, we're ready to start finishing up our project. So here I've got it up to my desired length. This, although it doesn't look like much of a hat now, it's gonna look much better once we finish up our project. I've done about 50 rounds here. This includes the cast on, so just keep an eye on the counter here. That's why we want to reset it at the start. The cast off is probably the trickiest part of this process, but with a little practice, it'll make it a lot easier. So to cast off, what we'll do, we'll open up the yarn holder and remove the yarn. And we're gonna give it about 35 inches of clearance. Now, 35 inches is what is recommended for the whole round, but feel free to go a little bit more than that. It's always better to have a little more yarn than a little less, since we can't really finish up our project if we have too little yarn. Alright, now that I've given my yarn some clearance, I'll want to use a yarn needle, one of which is in the kit alongside the knitting machine. This is a metallic one, and it has a unique shape, so it's easier to pick off your stitches as you work through them. So what we're going to do is go ahead and thread our yarn needle, and these are pretty easy to thread. They have very large eyes, and you can just kind of put them through by hand. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into each stitch and alternate going into them through the front and then through the back. So what I mean by that is, so we're going to start with the stitch that the yarn is coming out of. Put it in. Make sure your yarn doesn't get caught like it is here. Then we're going to pull it all the way through. With 35 inches, you do get quite a bit to work with, but again, it's better to have more yarn than to have too little. So then we're going to turn the crank a little bit more. Make sure that when you're inserting your needles, that the hooks on the knitting machine have gone all the way down. So these are called suture retainers. So you're going to want to go right between them. So as we went in on the last one, we're going to come out. And pull it all the way. And what you'll notice is that as we do this process, the stitches are getting picked off of the machine, so when we're all the way done, the product will just be super easy to take right out of it. Let's do a couple more and then we'll speed it up. So we're going to go in through this stitch, pull, pull, pull. Crank it a little bit more. We're going to come out through this stitch. In. And this is another process where it helps to be very patient, much like the cast on. The better you do this, the better your product will turn out. Okay, and now that we've done our cast off, here is the product off of the knitting machine. But as you can see, it's still kind of tubular and not quite a hat yet. And that's where the fun part comes in with the way the knitting machine works and how its cast off works. So we're going to take the end with our needle still attached, just pull it. And what that does is it cinches the top of the product, meaning you have a nice little beanie now. There's a lot of things you could do to maybe spruce it up a little bit. But just as a sort of precaution, I recommend just going back in with your needle and making a knot. So that way everything stays fastened and will last a little bit longer. And at the bottom, feel free to just kind of wrap this around, give it a bit of a brim. And all of your excess yarn, after you've made the knot, you can just trim right off of it. So here's our completed project for the knitting machine hat. What I did was I went back in with the yarn needle and just worked the end of my yarn back into it. You just do like an in out type stitch, and I created a brim here. You can add all sorts of embellishments to it. Maybe you can add a button that you may make here with our button machine. You can make a pom-pom to add to the top. But whatever it is, it'll be a beautiful handmade hat. Thank you for watching this part of 12 Days of Making, and be sure to check out some of our other 12 Days of Making videos for awesome gift and craft ideas.